Go.
Go.
I'm here with Al Snow. Hi, Al. How you doing?
Let's go.
I got a couple of questions for you. Were you surprised with the support you got?
Wait.
Yeah, dude,
Slow
you're
down.
forcing through this thing.
Just take your time.
Okay.
Don't be nervous.
Oh, no.
Don't be nervous.
All right, ready? Take it from the top.
You don't need to cut that. We can keep
Oh, you
it.
want to keep that?
Yeah, why?
Done.
Yeah. This kid
Were you s-
needs a hug.
Were you surprised with the support you got from fans and management for the Job Squad gimmick?
Believe me, I'm surprised whenever I get any support from anybody. You know, yeah. Unfortunately, divorce is more of a woman's thing, and they get all the support. I should know. I've been there. I'm always happy to have any fans at all. I'm thrilled that people still recognize me and acknowledge me, and people got behind any gimmick that I would do. I was very happy and thankful that they would. I always say to myself, but for the grace of God, and thank God I'm able to do this, because otherwise I'd just be a greeter at Walmart. We'd be rolling. Hey, Sabu just went by, rolling back the prices, which is not bad. I mean, being a greeter at Walmart has its own perks. I mean, hug women all day. Granted they're not exactly attractive, but can't be picky if you're a greeter at Walmart. So.
Okay.
I've got extreme gas, and we're in an enclosed space right now, so this should be a lot of fun.
Hopefully you can hold that back for now.
Yeah, the Colonel is really kicking me right now. It's KFC, people.
Do you think the art of the jobber is no longer a necessity?
And what do you mean by the art of the jobber? And
Well, more or less, back in the old school days, you'd have your classic jobber against, say, a superstar, and back in the days with wrestling, they would have certain jobbers wrestle the guys on TV.
you mean guys that would do TV matches and would be
Right.
Yeah. There's always a necessity for everybody in the wrestling business. The real reason why everybody shakes everybody's hand is because we all need each other. You can't make any money on your own. Nobody's a star in and of themselves. Nobody's bigger than the business. Nobody ever has been. That's why we each shake each other's hands, because we genuinely should say thank you to each other. One guy can't be in the main event without a guy in the opening match. I can't win if somebody's not willing to do me the favor of losing. You know what I mean? And I know that people they use jobber as a derogatory term, and I guess in a way, it was meant that way. But to be honest with you, I don't think if you really have respect for the business and you have respect for the people that are all in it, I don't think there's really any derogatory position or situation ever in this business, And I think that now more than ever we need jobbers and we need stars and we need everybody. So.
Are characters being poorly?
Damn good answer too.
Very good answer, I have to say.
This guy didn't even put it over.
Excellent answer.
Thank you. Stick around. You might actually learn something.
Are characters being poorly developed because there are no more Saturday morning squash matches to get over their gimmick and finishing moves?
I don't think that's the case. I think that that characters are being developed. I think that unfortunately they may not have enough time with the way that TV is ran these days to have the time to really properly develop them to their fullest extent. I also think that unfortunately for a lot of the guys, I think that the wrestling business has always been the wrestlers' business, because without the wrestlers there is no business, and it kind of got flip-flopped a little bit, I think, in the last few. Hello, I'm busy. In the last few years, I think it kind of got flip-flopped in the fact that it's now become more about the writers, and it's become more about the creative team, and it's become more about the promoter than it has been about the wrestlers. And the wrestlers were what really drove the business. The wrestlers were the ones who came up with characters. The wrestlers were the ones who created those characters. They were the ones who developed those characters. And because of the fact that they're the ones that did it, that's why it worked. If I give you a different character, and we're not actors, we're not professional actors, but the reason that those characters work for those guys was because they were an extension of their real personality. So you could believe it, you could feel it, because they could too. And unfortunately, it's been taken kind of out of their hands and put in other people's hands, and I don't think it's the same. So,
Actually,
good answer.
actually, I agree.
Thank you.
Do you think Tough Enough was an effective method of finding new talent?
People will say that I'm biased because of being involved with it, but I'll tell you that I think Tough Enough was a fantastic way of finding new talent, exposing wrestling to a new audience, growing the audience. It was an infomercial for the business itself. It was a way to give fans of the business a new respect for it, and to open up doors to bring in new fans so that they could maybe gain a new appreciation or an appreciation at all for the business that they otherwise would never even have bothered watching it. I can't tell you how many different people came up to me from all walks of life. I've never watched wrestling before. Boy, I watched that Tough Enough show. And, then they kind of would say, well, and then I started following wrestling because I knew the guys from Tough Enough that went into wrestling, and it kind of brought them in, and it helped grow the audience. And I think it was a positive all the way around. It brought a lot of young talent into the business that otherwise might not have been able to get in.
I also think a lot of people looked at wrestling a whole different way after viewing Tough Enough, because I have people, friends of mine, family members who watch Tough Enough, and they never realized the appreciation what the workers go through.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I think that helped open a lot of people's eyes, and not just fans of the business, but people that don't really care about the business. And, it had a universal appeal in the standpoint that when you're a teenager or you're a kid, everybody wants to do something, unrealistic, or everybody thinks is unrealistic. Like, say, for instance, you want to be a rock star, you want to be a race car driver, you want to be a professional athlete. And, these kids, that's what they wanted. They had a dream and they wanted to do it, and it was a way to see what they had to go through to get to it. So I thought it was great. I thought it was beneficial for the business. That's for sure.
We touched upon the positives. How about the negatives of the Tough Enough show?
As far as negatives, and again, people will say that I'm biased, but as far as negatives are concerned, as far as the Tough Enough show is concerned in the business, I don't think there were any. I don't see where you could say there was a negative. People can say that it was exposing the business, but I can tell you without a doubt that there was nothing done on that show that exposed or disrespected the business. In fact, I can't tell you how many people that have been around for years, senior people in the business, Dusty Rhodes, people that I really respect that were major stars, come up and would say how great the show was and how much they enjoyed it. And if they didn't feel like it disrespected the business or exposed the business, then I don't think it did. That's a big credit goes to my best friend Big John Gaborik, who he was very instrumental in making sure that the show was put together in such a way as that it only reflected the business in a positive light. So I really don't see a negative. And again, everybody will say, well, you were on the show, but trying to be as unbiased as possible. If I actually thought there was a negative of the show, I would say it. You know what? There's one negative, and that is that unfortunately, the people that tried out for it got a stigma about them, and everybody thought that they were taking the easy way, or from people that were jealous in the business, and that's ridiculous. So, because I'll tell you right now, if it had been 25 years ago, Tough Enough been around, I'd have tried it too. If you could have told me of a way that I could have gotten into this business, especially back then when it was harder to get in this business than it was to get in the mafia, and that's not exaggeration. You tell me what grocery store your wife was going to, make sure it was canned good day so she couldn't push the grocery cart too fast, I'd run that bitch over and kill her so I could get in this. So, going to Tough Enough would have been nothing.
Very interesting. I happen to like that answer a lot. Are you surprised at the success or lack of many of the talents that came out of Tough Enough program?
No, I'm not. I think that they all did very well, and they were given an opportunity. And a thing that a lot of people fail to realize, and even a lot of the talent don't even understand or realize, is that this is a business and an art that takes years. I mean, and not years of just doing, but years of experience, okay? The way I explain it to people that I train is that when you were taught the alphabet you had no clue or understanding or concept that by putting those letters together, they formed words. And putting words together formed sentences. And putting sentences together could tell stories and transmit thoughts and ideas. Well, you didn't know that when you first learned the alphabet. That took years and years and years of elementary education, and then junior high, and then high school. And some people, Lord knows, who are probably here right now down in that basement, going to the convention, still don't understand the concept of putting letters together to create words and sentences and stories and ideas. So what makes people think that in 1 year's time, or even 5 years' time, that anybody's going to get a true grasp of doing something as complicated as professional wrestling? It's absurd.
It takes a long time to learn the craft.
It takes years. I broke into the business in 1982, and people would tell me then, you're not going to make any money, kid, until you're in your mid-30s. You know, and that's working, not wrestling, but wrestling 5, 6, 7 days a week, you know, with guys that had been wrestling for 20 or 30 years. Then they would take you in the ring, and they would make you feel it. They would work with you physically. And what we're trying to do now, because those guys don't exist anymore in the locker rooms. Now we're trying to teach something by verbally telling somebody when it's something that should be taught by instinct. And the only way you learn by instinct is by having the experience in the ring with somebody that has more experience than you. So.
Very true. What are your thoughts on how the WWE is criticized for hiring girls with no interest in wrestling to be a part of the Diva Search?
The WWE is in the business of drawing money. You know, wrestling is about drawing money. As much as everybody would like to say that it's about some other higher idea, it's not. Professional wrestlers are their sole existence, their sole purpose, their job is not to have a great match. It's to have a match that sells tickets and puts asses in seats. There ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Everything that a promoter does with you is not a charitable cause. It's an investment of time and money in you. If you are put on Raw or SmackDown, that's TV time. Now, how much does 30 seconds cost for a commercial on SmackDown or Raw? Just 30 seconds. I'm going to give you a 6-minute match. I want you to go out there and have that really good, great artistic match that you longing to have, or do I want you to go out there and sell more tickets than what it just cost me to put your happy ass in the ring? Hey! Vince Russo. Do you understand?
Yes.
And the same goes with the girls. You know, what's the one thing? And listen, you can pull any girl out you want. Okay, you can turn your head and spit, and you can find an attractive woman nowadays. I mean, that's not it. You got to find that girl that knows how to work being a girl. Do you understand?
Yes.
Like Sable, you know, people paid, arenas all around the country paid to come and see her walk to the ring and back. That's amazing.
Yes.
I mean, she made a lot of money.
Yes, I remember.
I do too. Heck, I'd got fake boobs, and you know, if I could get away with it and walk just to and from the ring, you know. But that was the name of the game. And this thing, Tough Enough, the Diva Search, all that, it's nothing's new. Nobody's reinventing the wheel. To some degree or another, in this business, there's always been those people that are gimmicks. They're people that are brought in because they are an attraction in and of themselves to draw the house. And you surround them with workers so that you can make money. Now, workers will always make money. Workers will always have a spot in the business and always make money to a certain degree or another, but they'll always make money because they're workers. Gimmicks and wrestlers will have a run, they'll make a certain amount of money, and they'll go away. That's the way it is. It's a business of drawing and attraction, and that's it. And let's face it, it's, you know, the primary audience is male, so hello, you know.
Enter the Divas.
Yeah. And I say bring them more, you know, more the merrier, please. You know, again, when you're back to your jobber question, you know, nobody's a star in and of themselves. Nobody's bigger than this business. And if the more you can bring in to build the business itself, then the more money everybody makes. You know, it's not like the divas just get to make money, because that's not how it operates. It's not everybody does. That's, you know, you're making $500 a night. I'm making $300 a night. Do I not do the favor and put you over so that in the main event you're now making $1,000 a night, but now I'm making $700? But because I'm jealous of you, I'm not going to do it. That's stupid. That's poor business, you know. So if the Divas can bring in more people and bring in a larger audience, and then thus expose more people to me and the possibility of me being able to now work them and get them to draw to come in and watch me, so be it. You know, come on in. Do all you can.
I hear that. How do you think Vince McMahon dropped the ball with the recreation of ECW?
Well, you know, and listen, anybody that knows me knows I don't kiss ass. I never have kissed ass. I just basically say my opinion, and I'm very opinionated. And I think that it's unfair to say that Vince McMahon dropped the ball. And always has been in all territories. Every promoter has a different vision. Every promoter has a different style. If you were to go out and work for Don Owens, it's different than if you'd have worked for Jerry Jarrett in Tennessee. If you were to work in Eddie Graham's territory, it was different than, different but similar to when you went and worked for Crockett, which was different than if you went and worked for Von Erichs in Texas, which was sort of different. You understand? Every territory had its own style. Bill Watts had his own style. So now you're expecting that Vince McMahon is going to take over ECW and it's going to be exactly the same as what Paul Heyman did. And that's not possible. They're two different people, two different visions, two different ways of doing things, two different thoughts and ideas, two different eras, two different completely different sets of times, two different talent pools, and not to mention two different production ways. Paulie would just simply tape a show. He'd just videotape an ECW show at the arena or wherever we went. And then he'd spend, 6 or 7 24-hour-a-day days sequestered in Ron Buffone's basement with Charlie and other people eating Chinese food, watching Monday Night Raw and other programs, and editing it all down. Well, that's a completely different style than what Vince does, and so it's going to come across a different way. And to say that Vince dropped the ball is not really fair to Vince, or it's not really a proper understanding of how the business operates.
So more or less, we're talking about two different visions.
Absolutely, you got two different promoters, you have two different visions, you have two different directions, you get, and again, you have two different talent pools. There's just no way that you could do it exactly the same time. And two different eras, There's nothing older than yesterday's news. I mean, sure, for the fans that they were fans of the original ECW, okay, but once that enamor wears off, what's he going to do now? He's invested all this time and money and talent that, they have their little bit of a run, and now what are we going to do to make the next set of ECW superstars? So, it's not, like I said, it's not really fair to Vince to say that he dropped the ball with ECW. And that's coming from a former ECW guy.
That seems fair enough. What do you think he could have done differently, though?
What do I think he could? Well, I'm sure he could have done 100 things differently. But at the end of the day, I'm not responsible for, I can't even imagine how many people and their livelihoods and their families he's responsible for keeping up. Not just the wrestlers. All the wrestlers only think about themselves, but think about all the TV studio people. Nobody knows how many people work in that TV studio, how many people work in that office building, how many people work on the road, production, lighting, sound. You go down a list of how many hundreds of employees that man is responsible for as far as maintaining their livelihoods. And the only way you maintain their livelihood is by drawing people to watch it.
Right.
So, for me to say, well, I'd have done this differently and I'd have done that differently, well, hell, it's easy for me to say that because I don't have to pay the price for any decision that I sit here and tell you I'm going to make.
On your head.
That's right. I'm not carrying on my back the guy that works at the TV studio. I'm not carrying on my back the guy that he's paying $100,000, to work in the office. I'm not carrying any of those people on my back. Now, he's got to do that, and now, he's also, and I'm not beating the drum for Vince, but you got to look at this in the real world. You can't just look at it in the rose-colored glasses that sometimes wrestling fans look at it, and they all, Vince is a demon, he's from hell, rah, rah, rah. He's got to make those decisions, and ultimately he's the only one that's got to pay the price for it. But unfortunately for him, if he makes the wrong decision, there's a whole lot of people that will lose jobs, will lose, their families won't have an income, all because he decided he would placate certain people and just do the popular thing. So I can't tell you what I would do differently because I'm not going to pay the price for it.
Understood. How do you think TNA is developing as a mainstream competitor to WWE?
They seem like they're doing well, but it's going to take a long time to really come along. And I hope and pray for the wrestling business itself that they do, that they continue to keep growing and keep going in the right direction, and they provide competition, for an alternative for the fans. I think that benefits everybody, not just the fans and not just the wrestling business, but the wrestlers too.
Bring back some competition.
Yeah, I think that's good. The old saying, you put two lawyers in town and, they both make money. You put one lawyer in town, he starves to death. So.
True, exactly. What are your thoughts on Vince Russo's style of booking?
Everybody can demonize Vince Russo. I think Vince Russo and Vince McMahon work very well together. I think Vince Russo, and it wasn't just Vince Russo. There were a lot of people that are unsung heroes and villains. Vince Russo's been vilified, and he's also been exemplified as a hero too. But there were a lot of people that were at the TV studio and were integral at that time. Yeah, ringer. There you go. Yeah, Jackie's ringer. Yeah. Brutal. See, my phone's been ringing and it's on vibrate, so.
It's a very good feature.
Yeah, it's called being professional, but what do I know? There were a lot of people at the TV studio were in part of Vince McMahon's inner circle that Vince Russo was also a part of, and it was a big joint effort that revitalized WWF at that time. But Vince Russo certainly was a part of that. Was he the absolute be-all, end-all? No, but Vince Russo had the balls to say things to Vince McMahon that a lot of people didn't at that time. To tell him, now that doesn't work, this worked. To argue with him and had the passion to stand up for what he believed in. So can't fault him for that.
Enter the Attitude Era.
Yeah, and there was the collaboration, the hidden collaboration with Paul Heyman, but it wasn't just the collaboration with Paul Heyman. It was there were a lot of people, a lot of talent there at that time that had been working and had a certain amount of experience level that it was the right place at the right time to get the right exposure and the right opportunity, and Vince Russo was instrumental in that. So.
Tell me, what are your thoughts of the lack of kayfabe now today in pro wrestling?
In regards to what? What are we kayfabing?
Well, back in the 70s, the 80s, even the 90s, everybody had a certain gimmick that, they would kayfabe on TV, and they'd have a certain gimmick to uphold, and they would protect that 24/7. Now today, when you go into the business, back in the days, the faces and the heels would enter in separate areas, and it was very well protected. Even like during interviews,
hold on. First off, I hate when people talk to me about protecting the business. Your idea of protecting the business is totally different. Hey, Christian York. Your idea of protecting the business is completely and absolutely misunderstood and mistaken. That is not protecting the business. Everybody thought that it was protecting the business. Protecting the business was and has and always will be not allowing everybody to get in it. So remember what I talked about, everybody needing everybody and everybody having to shake everybody's hand? That's right, because it only takes one person to kill a town. It also takes everybody, though, to pop it, to make money. Do you understand?
Very true.
So, I know Vince McMahon a lot of times holds himself to blame for killing the territories, thus killing the business. And I don't think that that's totally the sole degradation of the business to where it is now. And don't get me wrong, I'm not putting anybody down, and I'm not belittling anybody. And Lord knows I've done it myself. But I can literally track back to when Larry Sharp had the Monster Factory and got all that mainstream publicity for having a wrestling school, and then a bunch of other people started opening up wrestling schools, which is fine. But then what they did was they made an easy egress into a business that otherwise was very closed off. It was something that you had to really, really work to get into. You had to either know somebody, and the reason it was so tough to get in the business was because you were personally responsible for anything I said or did. So your way of making your living and feeding your family was now in my hands. So if I screwed up, you'd be down the tubes too. You understand? I'd be a reflection on you.
Yeah, you would be working hand in hand. Sure.
That's right. I'm now your apprentice. Well, then once the era of schools became so popular, well, then all you had to do was just pay a guy, and you go. Now you're a wrestler. You can put a pair of boots on, and anybody, pair of boots and a pair of tights, and you have a ton of wrestlers, and the business is full of wrestlers. But I was taught that wrestlers don't make money. Workers make money. And unfortunately, between a combination of allowing everybody to just come into the business, and then I train you, you're with me for 2 years. Now you buy a ring, you go get a building, now you train him. Now he's with you for a year, you guys have a falling out, he goes gets the ring, go gets a building, he starts training people. Now, experience-wise, back to the alphabet and putting the words together, you know letters, and you may even know how to put words together. All he knows is the letters. But now he's teaching other people as if he knows how to tell stories, transmit emotions, and he doesn't. So now he's teaching those people. Now, of course, some of those people are going to go buy a ring, and they're going to open up a building too. They're going to have a school. So now you have the blind leading the blinder, and thus the degradation of the business. Do you understand?
Totally.
The way you protected the business was you didn't allow just anybody to come into it. And then when you did, you made them earn it. And there were reasons for why they put people through what they put them through. And that was to make sure that they were in it for the right reasons, and so that because it would jeopardize that. It's not like now, like you see a lot of these guys now that they can go and function in normal society. They can go have another job. But a lot of these people that were wrestling back in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, even into the 80s, even though they were probably highly intelligent and probably some of the most actual classiest people I've ever met, if it weren't for wrestling, what were they going to be doing, to make a really good living to feed their families? It's not like they were going to go off and go join NASA, or run off to, Mount Sinai, to the hospital, and become a doctor. That was what they did. That was who they were, and they did everything they could to protect it so that it wasn't jeopardized in any form or fashion. The wrestlers these days don't. They just don't, and they don't need to either, which is good for them. As far as kayfabe was concerned, that was a way to protect the business because, look, everybody, only the dumbest mark up in the hills that ate dog food for a month, able to, so he could save up money to buy the tickets, they're the only ones that still believe that wrestling was a competitive situation. But just like a magician, you've got to do everything you can to help people suspend their disbelief, to allow them to be involved. Well, kayfabe was a way to do that, was a way to not chisel away the very thing that you were working so hard to try and develop. You wanted to create an atmosphere so that before these people walked in the building, they already were getting into the idea that you were there to win and not lose. But if they see you walking hand in hand with your opponent, well, it just tells them that they just went counterclockwise. So now when I get in there, what would have taken me 30 seconds to accomplish with you is now going to take us 15 minutes to get to the same place. And we may never ever actually get to where we could have been if you'd have just went in one door and I'd have went in the other. So that's a very long answer for a very short question.
It makes a lot of sense, though. So,
I got one more thing. And the other thing is, because, everybody has their ideas, but, the other thing is when I broke into the business, the locker room was full of guys that had been working for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Now, the locker room's full of guys that have been, working for 5, 8, 2, One, you have 20 guys in the locker room, and one guy's got the most experience and it's been working for 6 years. Back, the reason that WWF back in the early 80s, mid 80s could run an A town, a B town, and a C town all on the same night was because they had how many guys on the roster, and the guy with the least amount of experience was wrestling 10 years. Now guys have been, lucky if they've been wrestling 5-6 years on the indies and they're up there in the locker room. And again, not putting anybody down, not saying they're not talented, because actually I think physically the guys are even more talented now than they ever have been. So.
Okay. Any chance of seeing you back in WWE or maybe an appearance in TNA?
I don't know. I have no clue. I'm not the Amazing Kreskin. I can bend spoons with my mind, but I can't predict the future. If the money's right, I'm as much of a whore as anybody else. So, if Vince were to,
Would that happen to be a Mick Foley pun?
no, because Mick is a whore. I'd love to go back to work for Vince at some point, but it's been a long time. I mean, I enjoy what I'm doing now, being the head trainer in OVW and developing the talent there for WWE and writing the TV show and all that stuff. It's a lot of responsibility, but it's a lot of fun, and I don't miss the road. I was in the airport today from 7:30 until 2 in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and the whole time I'm sitting there going, you know what? I do not miss this. This sucks ass. So.
One more question to ask you. Do you think today's audience has lost touch with pro wrestling?
Do I think that today? I think that pro wrestling has kind of lost touch with the audience. I think that we've kind of, over the last 10 or 15 years, have gotten away from what it really is, and that is that it's about winning and losing, and that everything you do in the ring is to beat your opponent or not be beaten. It's not to beat them up. Think about it this way: if wrestling is a work, fake, and you were a wrestler back in the early 1900s, and you could do anything you want because hey, it's fake, right? You can make the rules. Why do you think they sat around and went, you know what, we should probably make punching a guy in the face illegal? Why do you think they did that?
First of all, because it hurts like hell.
It's probably one of the more unbelievable things that we do. Yeah. Well, how much do you see that, though, these days? And it's done for it's violence for violence's sake instead of violence to try to beat the guy. And I think that's the thing that we have departed from and gotten away from. We're no longer, it's not that you're, having a competitive wrestling match. Hey, son of a bitch, you.
Let me duck.
Sorry, I gotta run. See you though, all right?
Hi, Mr. Snow.
Hi, Shelly. How are you?
Tomorrow?
Huh?
Are you gonna be here tomorrow?
Yep.
I'm gonna bug you.
Okay.
See you later.
For those of you who didn't know, that was Mick Foley along with Ariel.
Yeah. Mick Foley, man whore. He's the biggest guy that has no ass. Do you ever notice that? He had a belt sander accident in high school. He backed up, disappeared.
I think he heard me actually before what I said. That's why he came here.
Yeah, I think so. It's his horror senses were tingling. I think that if you watch matches, and I always ask the young talent, where do you win every match? And nobody can answer me. You win it on the mat. Everything you do once the bell rings is to get the other person off his feet on the mat, keep him there for as long as possible to keep the advantage so that then they try to get out of there so that they keep from losing. Where now, we literally can see guys knock a guy down, and I'm guilty of it too, have been guilty of it in the past, knock a guy down and then bend down and pick him up from the very place that he was trying to beat him.
So you have like steamrolling, so to speak.
No, it's violence for violence. It's more about beating the other person up than it is about beating them. Right. And people, that's the one story that we always have to tell, is that we're out there to try and win and try not to lose, not just beat another guy up.
Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Really.
Can you dig it?